Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. On tonight's Evan Miller Report, we got breaking news out of Kenya where police have arrested 5 suspects in connection with Thursday's attack on a university in that country. We'll bring you the very latest on tonight's report. Also on tonight's program, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Iran must accept Israel's existence. We have the Prime Minister's remarks tonight. Also on tonight's program, 2 more Saudi soldiers killed on the Yemeni border, according to their ministry. This as China evacuates their citizens and foreigners from Aden. Here in U.S. political news, an indicted senator using campaign cash for a defense website. That's the new information coming in regards to the indictment of Senator Mendez from New Jersey. One senator says he's going to be running again at the age of 81. And 65 million taxpayer dollars spent on government labor union politics. We have that story and much more. Plus, Corey Abbott.
Thank you, Jay. An Alabama death row inmate waiting 3 decades for his fate to arrive has been let off the hook. GE loses a facility to the destroyer of rainforests. Fire. Where does your favorite grocery store rank on the national list? You'll find out in our business report, as well as finding that hiring was lackluster this month. Shaquille O'Neal makes his debut in lawsuits across America, and it's going to be interesting to hear that one. And moviegoers have one last chance to see Paul Walker in cinematic glory.
We have all that and more, plus Orlean Koehle joins us to review the global socialism and international stories of the week on the Evan Miller Report. Your conservative news source starts right now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Friday, April the 30th. April 3rd, I should say, not April 30th. I'm already thinking the end of the month, ladies and
Great
gentlemen.
start. You're already thinking about my birthday. I hope you get me something good, Jay.
See, I was thinking about Corey's birthday. I was online actually before the
Yes!
show looking for it today. No, I'm not telling people what Corey Evans getting for his birthday. That would spoil the surprise.
I'll find out when I get it.
You're a yes, you certainly will, sir. April the 30th. See, that's what happens when someone starts throwing dates off the air at me right before showtime. It gets me all confused. But it is Friday, April the 3rd. Welcome to the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source. It just shows a sign, ladies and gentlemen. I am sleep deprived from yesterday's Prime Minister's debate over in the UK, and that it is the weekend. So the weekend is among us. So we have a lot to look forward to. As we stated in our teaser tonight, Orlean Koehle joins us at 8:45 Eastern, 5:45 Pacific Standard Time. Talk to us about the big stories hitting us this week, including a personal experience. She was up in the air on a German Wings flight, not the same flight, obviously, that crashed over in the French Alps, but she was in the air at the same time that German Wings flight went down, and she has some opinions about that, as well as some opinions about what has happened between the U.S. and Iran in regards to the possible nuclear deal that is happening later this month on June the 30th. So we look forward to having Orlean on later in the program. And, of course, we thank our friends over at Pundit Press once again yesterday for partnering with us for that Prime Minister's debate. And, of course, Pundit Press is back with us, ladies and gentlemen, in broadcasting the Evan Miller Report night in and night out. And we thank them for their affiliation with us night in and night out. More of that, of course, to come. throughout the year here on the SHR Media Network. All right, let's get off to the news, ladies and gentlemen, because we do have developing news tonight. And we start off in Kenya, where police have arrested 5 suspects in connection with Thursday's attack at Garissa University College in that country. Interior Minister Joseph Narkasi said Friday, according to NTV. Narasi told reporters the university will be able to confirm Saturday if everyone has been accounted for. Thursday's attack by al-Shabaab militants killed 147 people, including 142 students, 3 security officers, and 2 university security personnel. The attack left 104 people injured, including 19 who are still in critical condition. During search and recovery efforts on Friday, the cable news network CNN witnessed one male who was not a student hiding under a bed. The male was taken into custody and was being treated as a suspect, according to sources close to the investigation. The find sparked an additional search of the building. Sources said 3 people, all students, were found alive. A female student was found under a pile of bodies. Another female student was found hiding in a wardrobe, and a male student was hiding in the bathroom, according to sources confirmed to CNN. Student Helen Titus said she survived by fooling the attackers into thinking she was dead. After gunmen shot fellow students, she smeared their blood onto her body to make it seem she had been shot too, she told CNN today at a makeshift center for evacuated students. At the time of the shooting, she said, they skipped me. Most of the victims have been shot from behind in the back of the head. They're facing down always, a worker with St. John's Ambulance Service said Friday. They're always facing down. They're shot in the heads around the back. Early Thursday, of course, an explosion and gunfire cut through the morning quiet on campus about 90 miles from Kenya's border with Somalia, tearing many students in dormitories out of their sleep. Al-Shabaab gunmen at first stormed a Christian prayer service where they killed some and then took others hostage. Then they went across campus with them, shooting non-Muslims and sparing Muslims, according to witnesses. And of course, Orlean will have more to talk about that when she comes on later in the program. Moving on tonight to the Middle East tonight, where we start off in Israel, where their Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has demanded that Iranian recognize Israel's right to exist be ran into an emerging nuclear deal, which is supposed to be signed in 3 months' time on June the 30th, as he convened top officials for talks today. After meeting his security cabinet, which comprises key ministers, National Security Advisor Orlean Koehle, and other officials, he said they were unanimous in their opposition to the framework agreement, which had emerged yesterday from marathon talks in Switzerland between the Islamic Republic and world powers. The cabinet is united in strongly opposing the proposed deal, he said in a statement at the end of the meeting, hours before the onset of the week-long Passover Jewish holiday. Some say that the only alternative to this bad deal is war, he added. That's not true. There is a third alternative, standing firm, increasing the pressure on Iran until a good deal is achieved. And he stipulated that one of the provisions of a good deal must be to end Iranian threats against the Jewish state. Israel demands that any final agreement with Iran will include a clear and unanimous Iranian recognition of Israel's right to exist, he said. Israel will not accept an agreement which allows a country that vows to annihilate us to develop nuclear weapons, period. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, today, Iran's president spoke today, and I'm not going to go into what the Iranian president said, but it says a lot of words of what Iran thinks of Israel when we have people, instead of cheering that those sanctions will be lifted in 3 months' time, that all they are saying is death to Israel. So it says a lot, Corey Evan. We just made the deal with the devil.
Yeah, and it's a deal that we're certainly going to live to regret.
Yes, and I believe the person who's going to live to regret it is President Obama, and he will regret it after he is out of office, unfortunately.
Big time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to Asia tonight, where North Korea has test-fired missiles once again. They test-fired 4 short-range missiles into the sea off its west coast, says South Korean military officials. In a statement, the Joint Chiefs of Staff said the missiles had a range of about 87 miles. They were firing from Dongchang Rain in the north of the country this afternoon local time, it said. The North often conducts missile tests in protest of the U.S.'s and South Korea's military drills, one of which is ongoing. And Corey Evan will have more out of the Asia region with 2 stories out of China in just a moment. 2 more Saudi soldiers have been killed on the border with Yemen, the Interior Ministry said today. 2 soldiers from the border guards were martyred during an exchange of fire at a border point in Ashur region in Saudi Arabia's southwest, said the ministry spokesman, cited the official Saudi press agency. They were subject to heavy fire from a mountainous region inside the Yemeni border, which made it necessary to respond in the same manner. This situation was controlled with support from ground forces, according to a spokesman. The deaths come a day after the ministry announced the first Saudi casualty, a soldier shot from the Yemeni side of the border in the same area since a coalition led by Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, lodged airstrikes against Shia Houthi rebels in Yemen on March the 26th. This happening at the same time as China's Navy has evacuated 225 foreign nationals and almost 600 Chinese citizens from Yemen's southern port of Aden among fierce fighting there. China says it's the first time its military has rescued foreign nationals from a danger zone. As we stated, Houthi rebels in the city have been fighting troops loyal to ousted Yemeni President Abdul Mahdi Hadi. On Friday, the rebels withdrew from the presidential palace following Saudi-led airstrikes. Over the past 2 weeks, fighting in Yemen has left more than 500 people dead and some 1,700 wounded, UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos said. This week, Houthi rebels pushed through to the heart of Aden using tanks and armored vehicles. But on Friday, they were forced from the crater neighborhood and the presidential palace they had overrun the day before. Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan, and he has more on corruption in China as yet another government official has been arrested. Corey, take it away.
Oh, man. Jay, wait until you hear this one. It is yet another sign that communism is yet fall. Here we are. According to the Washington Post, China charged former Security Chief, Zhao Yongkang today with taking bribes, abusing his power, and disclosing state secrets, paving the way for one of the most significant political trials in the country in decades and underlining President Xi Jinping's dramatic consolidation of power. Zhao, 73, presided over the nation's huge and powerful state security apparatus, including police and intelligence agencies until his retirement in 2012, enforcing Communist Party control through a massive network of surveillance and repression. He was hated by many and feared by almost everyone. Zhao also controlled much of the country's huge oil industry, having risen to power through its ranks. He was a key member of the party's top body, the Politburo Standing Committee. I think that's how you pronounce it. His downfall breaks an unwritten rule in place for decades that made members of the Standing Committee immune from prosecution, even after retirement. The indictment accused Zhao of illegally accepting huge bribes, taking advantage of his position to seek benefits for others, abusing his power, intentionally disclosing state secrets, and, quote, causing heavy losses to public property, the state, and the people, according to the top Chinese prosecutor in a statement on his office's website. Zhao was arrested and expelled from the party last year, and the formal charges came as no surprise. The government has presented his arrest as a centerpiece of Xi's determination to root out corruption and proof that even senior party members are not above the law. In reality, experts said, given that corruption is widespread throughout the party, Zhao's downfall is more likely to represent Xi's victory over a rival faction that had attempted to block his rise. The charges had been made rumored long before they were made public, and Zhao's downfall came only after intense behind-the-scenes negotiations between powerful Communist Party leaders, according to experts. Zhao's allies included Bo Xilai, the charismatic former party chief of Chongqing, who was sentenced to life imprisonment for corruption in September 2013, and General Zhu Kaihao, who died of bladder cancer while under arrest on similar charges last month, said Willie Wo Lap Lam, a Hong Kong-based senior fellow at the Jamestown Foundation, a research and analysis institute in Washington. Last month, the Supreme People's Court said in an annual report that Zhao, Bo, and others had trampled laws and engaged in political activities that were not authorized by the top leadership. The report said they had caused severe harm to the party and the judicial system. The charges against Zhao were filed in a court in Tianjin, a city about 80 miles by road southeast of Beijing, where the trial will be held. No date has been set. State media promised last month that the trial would be open, although diplomats and independent journalists are almost certain to be barred and official reports carefully censored, Jay. Don't you just love when they censor all of these reports? And in addition, get this, the charges relating to leaking state secrets are very unlikely to be publicly aired. As head of domestic intelligence, Zhao would have had access to the entire nation's secrets, including those of powerful political rivals. So, believe it or not, we could be on that list of political secrets that he's probably exposed in some way, shape, or form, wouldn't you say, Jay?
Us being on a Chinese secret list, that would be surprising to me, but not surprising if it actually did happen.
Well, I'm just saying that
on us.
Yeah, especially since we owe them the bulk of our national debt.
See, Corey Evan knows his stuff, and of course, Corey Evan will have more in business later. Thank you very much on that, Corey. Corey Evan will be back with the national news in just a couple moments. Back over in Russia, where ships are docked at what was once a secret Norwegian naval base in the Arctic, have prompted concern from the NATO country's former top military leaders, anxious about its resurgent eastern neighbor roaming nearby. Norway's jagged Arctic coastline has regained its strategic importance since tensions between Russia and NATO members have spiked to levels not seen since the fall of the Soviet Union. The rocky relations have led to some criticizing the shutdown of the Olvarsvin naval base, a massive complex burrowed into a mountain near the northern town of Tromsø that has been closed since the year 2009. Shutting it down was driven by then seemingly reduced threat from Moscow and its massive northern fleet based on Russia's nearby Kola Peninsula. We sold the only base worthy of the name that we had up there. It's pure madness, former Vice Admiral Injar Sogen, who commanded Norway's northern forces, told AFP news agency. Skordin and other critics say Norway has robbed itself of a crucial foothold in the far north, forcing its submarines to travel hundreds of extra miles from their bases to defend the region. On top of that, 3 Russian warships that spent the winter docked deep within the mountain hideaway, once a closely guarded military facility. We are the only country along with Russia to have a permanent presence in the Barents Sea, where we share a common border. Obviously, our Navy should be stationed there, including our submarines. If the ships aren't there where they are needed, they might as well be scrapped altogether, he said. The way the base changed hands and ended up being rented to Russia research vessels, some of them seismic survey ships reportedly linked to a state-owned energy giant Gazprom, has added further fuel to their anger. When no buyers answered the armed forces' initial advert on Norway's version of a eBay ad on it, a Norwegian businessman clinched the deal in 2013 for a mere 40 million kroner, which is the equivalent of $5 million or 4.6 million euros. A steal given that NATO plowed nearly 4 billion kroner into its construction. There are no longer secrets surrounding this base, said its new landlord, Gunnar Wilsman, not since the military and NATO agreed to put it on the sale over the internet, along with photographs of every nook and cranny. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to say it, Norway made a bad decision giving up that military base, considering what our relations are with Russia today. Not only as the U.S., Corey, but as the rest of Europe, as far as they are concerned.
Ah, man. Yet another bad day at the office for them. That's the best I can describe it.
That's what you call a wasted $5 million, ladies and gentlemen. What a way to blow it.
Yeah, might as well just flush it down the pen.
There you go. Corey Evan with the famous quotes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to Myanmar tonight, where Myanmar's opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi said boycotting an upcoming historic election was an option if a military-drafted constitution that bars her from becoming president remains unchanged. In an interview today, the Nobel laureate told Reuters and ITN that her opposition, National League for Democracy Party, was ready to govern, but that the president, Thein Sein, was insincere about reform and might try to postpone the election. She also said U.S. praise for Myanmar's semi-civilian government, which took power in 2011 after nearly 50 years of brutal military rule, and made it complacent about reform, while scathing about what she called Thein Sein's hardline regime. Kyi emphasized the need to reconcile with the military, which detained her for 15 years until her release from house arrest in 2010. We don't think boycotting the election is the best choice. When asked whether her party would run with the Constitution unchanged, but we're not willing to rule it out altogether. We are leaving our options open. All right, moving over to the UK now, where 6 people have been arrested in Dover on suspicions of Syria-related terrorism offenses, says the West Midlands Police Department in the region. 5 men and 1 woman in their 20s were detained about 1800 British Standard Time on Friday in the departure zone of the Kent port, police said on Twitter. Searches are taking place at a number of addresses in the Birmingham area. Police said the arrests were part of an ongoing investigation and suspects are not a family group and were not accompanied by children. 4 of the men arrested are from Birmingham and in their 20s, police said. Man aged 26 and a 23-year-old woman of no fixed addresses were also held. The suspects were then questioned at a police station in the West Midlands area. They did not pose any immediate risk to public safety, the force added. Now over to some international politics now, where in the UK, where the Conservatives and Labour have come under pressure over claims they could be forced into a post-election deal with UKIP or the SNP respectively. According to the polls, they suggest there may be a hung parliament after the May 7th election, raising the possibility of a coalition government or a deal between different political parties. The Labour Party has called on the Tories to come clean over whether they would team up with UKIP, the independent party, in that event. And the Tories have warned a Labour SNP bill would destabilize the country. Former Lib Dem leader Lord Ashdown said Thursday that its inconclusive 7-way leaders debate suggested another coalition was inevitable. The televised event, of course, which was simulcast here on the SHR Media Network yesterday, featured David Cameron, Ed Miliband, and Nick Clegg, alongside UKIP's leader Nigel Farage, the SNP's Nicole Sturgeon, Green leader and communist Natalie Bennett, and Wales' Leanne Wood. The opinion poll suggested there was no clear winner from the debate, but commentators said it made the British political system look very different from the traditional 2 or 3 party setup. We should note, ladies and gentlemen, this will be the only televised debate where current Prime Minister David Cameron and Labour leader Ed Miliband will face each other. And with the polls pointing to there being no overall winner on May the 7th, there has been pressure on the parties to say what they would do if they did not win a majority. Farage of UKIP has described Cameron as somebody we can sit down and talk to, but he said UKIP could never do a deal with Ed Miliband because of his stance on the EU referendum. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Andy Burnham said the public deserved to know whether the Conservative Party planned to do a deal with Mr. Farage's party. He has written to David Cameron urging him to set out his intentions. This comes after both Mr. Cameron and his Conservative Chancellor George Osborne refused to rule out a deal during separate media appearances. All right, folks, I'll be back in a few minutes' time with some U.S. political news, including more on that indictment of New Jersey Senator Mendez in a moment. But first, we send it over up to Los Angeles to Corey Evan. He has the rest of the day's other news. Corey, take it away.
Thank you, Jay. An Alabama man has been freed after spending near... An Alabama man has been freed after spending nearly 30 years on death row, according to the BBC. Anthony Ray Hinton was convicted of murdering 2 restaurant managers in Birmingham in 1985, but was granted a new trial last year. Tests on bullets found at the crime scene could not be connected to a gun found at Mr. Hinton's home, prompting prosecutors to drop the case. His lawyer, Brian Stevenson, said his client was convicted because he couldn't afford better legal counsel. Walking out of the Jefferson County Jail in Birmingham, Mr. Hinton hugged family members and said, "Thank you, Jesus." Bullets from the crime scene were the only evidence that linked Mr. Hinton to the murders. Prosecutors said that modern forensic methods failed to link the bullets to a revolver found in Mr. Hinton's home. Quote, "Every day, month, every year that the state took from him, they took something that they don't have the power to give back," said Mr. Stevenson. At his first trial, Mr. Hinton's lawyer believed that his client only had $1,000 to hire an expert that could defend against the prosecution's allegations about the bullets. The lawyer hired the only expert willing to take the job at that rate, and jurors reportedly laughed as the expert struggled to answer questions during cross-examination. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled last year that Mr. Hinton didn't have adequate legal counsel at the first trial and said the case should be reconsidered at a second trial. Which, if that does come to trial, I will bring you the details on that as they become available. A Philadelphia woman was arrested today on charges she tried to join and martyr herself for the ISIS group, a day after 2 women in New York were charged with plotting to wage jihad by building a bomb and using it for a Boston Marathon-type attack. Kiana Thomas, was preparing to fly to Spain with hopes of reaching Syria to fight with the terror group, authorities said. Instead, she was arrested at her family's townhouse in a public housing development, which has 3 small U.S. flags adorning the porch. Authorities said she communicated with an ISIS group fighter in Syria who asked if she wanted to be part of a martyrdom operation. She told the fighter that the opportunity would be amazing. A girl can only wish, according to the documents. A federal magistrate ordered Thomas held pending a detention hearing Wednesday. Prosecutors will oppose bail. Last month, Thomas bought a ticket to fly to Barcelona on March 29th. She likely planned to take a bus to Istanbul and then reach Syria, according to an FBI affidavit filed in the case. Authorities put a stop to the trip when they raided her house March 27th, or as I like to call it, Istanbul crud. But back to the story. In court, Thomas wore a burqa as she acknowledged she understood the charge against her, attempting to provide material support and resources to a foreign terrorist organization. She was appointed a public defender who did not comment on the charge. They never do. Thomas appeared to show little emotion as she was led out of the house Friday morning in handcuffs, according to neighbor Ronnie Patterson. Patterson said she had seen investigators searching the home where Thomas appeared to live with her mother and grandmother a week ago. The women in the New York case are accused of plotting to wage violent jihad by building a bomb and using it for an attack like the 2013 Boston Marathon bombings. They were held without bail, and after a brief court appearance Thursday, the lawyer Thomas is charged with to provide material aid to terrorists, one of the same charges filed in 2010 against another Pennsylvania woman, Colleen LaRose, known as Jihad Jane, and 2 co-defendants in a terror plot that prosecutors say online messages and recruitment for overseas terror suspects. And I've got 2 more stories, lighter stories. Jay, do we have time for those, or do you want to go right into business? Excellent. Simon Wester woke up Friday to the sight of boats carting away her neighbors as torrential rain swamped portions of Kentucky's largest city, forcing emergency crews to navigate flooded neighborhoods and make more than 100 rescues. Wester and her 7-month-old son, Jeremiah, were rescued by a man she didn't know who took off his socks and waded through the floodwaters toward her. The man, Kevin Mansfield, charted a navigable path and ushered her out of the flooding. Severe thunderstorms rumbling across the state were blamed for the death of a woman who was camping with her family at Natural Bridge State Park in east central Kentucky. Elsewhere, a North Kentucky school bus with 16 students aboard was stranded by floodwaters that covered roads to schools. The heavy rain started Thursday and continued Friday. Some areas received an inch or 2 per hour, according to the National Weather Service. More than 6 inches of rain fell in Louisville, and Lexington had received more than 5 inches. I'm officially jealous, ladies and gentlemen. But then again, I know where else they could use water. in Louisville, of course, a fire erupted Friday morning at a General Electric appliance park in Louisville, shutting down production at the sprawling manufacturing center that employs thousands. The fire broke out in a non-production building, creating huge columns of smoke as more than 100 firefighters battled the blaze. GE spokeswoman Kim Freeman says there are no known injuries. She said the building was engulfed in flames and was used for offices and storage, and is also used by a private supplier distribution center. News media reports said the cause is not yet known. Freeman says production has ceased while firefighters battle the blaze. And now we'll go right into business. Excellent. The Dow is up 65 points at 17,763. The Nasdaq up 6 points at 48.86, and the S&P 500 up 7 at 20.66. Or as I like to call it, they lose a lot and gain a little. The year-long streak of robust monthly job creation was broken on Friday with the Labor Department's report that employers added just 126,000 workers in March. That marked a slowdown in hiring that echoed earlier signs that sluggish business investment and punishing weather were exacting a toll on the economy. Analysts blame the plunge in oil prices as well as a pall cast by a difficult winter across the Northeast and Midwest, a combo that put a crimp on spending in the energy patch and held back consumer spending and construction. Still, the new report represents only a limited snapshot, and many said they expect the economy to regain at least some of its momentum later this year. The unemployment rate held steady at 5.5%. Hourly wages, in one of the few bright spots in the report, rose 0.3% for private sector workers in March after a meager 0.1% raise in February, but hours worked were down slightly, so overall paychecks were left essentially flat. Mattel is making all the possible efforts to bounce back from their sales slump. It's lately announced Chairman Christopher Sinclair as its permanent CEO. Since '96, Sinclair has been Mattel board member. He's also serving as interim CEO of the company since the time Brian Stockton was ousted in January. Earlier, Sinclair was working as a PepsiCo executive and CEO of Carabiner International and Quality Food. The world's largest toy maker has been facing sluggish sales of Barbie and Fisher-Price, as children spend more time now playing electronic devices. No surprises there. Another major loss to the company is losing the license for Walt Disney's Frozen dolls to Hasbro in 2016. Excuse me. Is this working? Is this thing working? There we go.
You're back.
Sinclair said they're making steps to reduce bureaucracy as it slowed the decision-making process. With this, it's already started benefiting from greater energy and focus on the company. There's no doubt that they have many challenges to face and that there's a lot of work to do, but Sinclair has complete confidence that with a new management team, they'll be able to grab growth opportunities and perform better for the customers and reward their shareholders. And hopefully reward their workers in Mexico and China, but that's just me. And Jay, do you love or hate your supermarket? He sounds like he's on the fence.
Sale.
So that affects it right there. A lot may depend on how fresh it seems, according to Consumer Reports, which shows that some supermarkets deliver much fresher food than others. Americans average 83 trips a year to the supermarket, spending a total of $5,500 each, with more than half of that going for fresh food around the perimeter of the store, including produce, meat, bread, and ready-to-eats. Consumer Reports rated 68 supermarkets across the country on the quality of their fresh food, based on a survey of nearly 63,000 of their readers. And I'm going to go through the list briefly, and since we're in SoCal, I'll note that Stater Brothers came in at number 10, but Costco eclipsed them at number 6, and those two were eclipsed by Trader Joe's at number 3. And let's see, where's Walmart on this list? Ooh, they're near the bottom at 67. I would have thought that the world's biggest retailer.
I was in Walmart the other day because I don't tend to be a person who sticks it down to one store. It's whichever store usually has the best deal, and I do have to say, Walmart not so great on the quality of their product. Yeah, sure, they have plenty of different products you can choose from,
And it's
But
cheaper.
it's cheaper, but hey, that's what you want. If you want cheap food,
Yes.
that's where you can go for it. And I will say, you left there with the amount of groceries I bought for an average person. You left there without spending over $100. Got all my groceries for about $60, which isn't too bad for a grocery run if you're a single person.
Yes, well, you know what their product is worth.
Yeah, well, I don't question Walmart. If people such as college students on a low budget, that's a good place for them to go. If there's a family who's trying to feed their kids and trying to feed them healthy, maybe Trader Joe's, Sprouts, or even Costco is a better place to go, especially Costco, considering if you want to buy in bulk. So.
Yes,
Cool.
and I'll go ahead and send Jay this list, and you can find your grocery on that list if you want on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Right, that's what I've got for you in business. I'll go ahead and send it back to Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evan with the business news. Thank you very much for that. All right, folks, time to move it on over to the D.C. news right before we get to Orlean Koehle at 8:45 Eastern, 5:45 Pacific time. And for those of you listening on podcast, that's in about 10 minutes time here on the SHR Media Network. And we do start off tonight in D.C., where allies of New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez have launched a coordinated public relations campaign to support him through what is likely to be a long and expensive legal fight over federal corruption charges. Menendez pleaded not guilty Thursday to charges this week that he accepted nearly $1 million in gifts and campaign contributions from a longtime friend in exchange for a stream of political favors. But his supporters have been working quietly behind the scenes since news reports emerged back in March suggesting an indictment was immediate. Their efforts became apparent beginning Wednesday when supporting statements began pouring into reporters' inboxes shortly after the 14-count indictment was filed. The New Jersey Democratic State Committee has sent at least 6 news releases since, with statements from nearly 3 dozen local and national offices and community leaders. The releases include the hashtag I Stand With Bob, and advertised a new @IStandWithBob Twitter account that has tweeted more than 70 times since Thursday evening. There's also a slick website, IStandWithBob.com, that includes a round top of positive statements and news coverage, as well as a video from Menendez responding to the charges. It also has a frequent asked questions like, what does it mean to be indicted? The response begins with, an indictment is the paper that prosecutors write and present in a grand jury where the senator has no chance to respond or participate. The site, which also seeks contributions, was paid for by the Menendez for Senate Campaign Committee, which has $1.45 million cash on hand, according to its most recent federal campaign filing reports. Visitors to Mendez4NJ.com are now redirected to the new site. A spokesman for Menendez, Stephen Stamberg, says the efforts, including the outpourings of support from elected Democrats, have been organic. Whatever that means, ladies and gentlemen, we'll keep you an eye on this story and give you the latest as it becomes available. Meanwhile, moving on to one senator to another, who at the age of 81, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says his age won't slow him down as he runs for a 7th term. He said, quote, I think that age isn't a factor, or I wouldn't be running for office, or I wouldn't be running this morning, said the 81-year-old this morning, referring to his regular jogging sessions. The 6th-term Republican held the first fundraiser for his 2016 campaign earlier this week and is nearly halfway through his annual tour of 99 Iowa counties. Grassley, the second oldest member of the Senate, has been in elected office since 1959 and is hugely popular in his home state, where he is known for his vigorous work ethic and down-home charm. According to a recent poll from the Quinnipiac University, it shows that 67% of voters approve of the job Grassley is doing, and 55% say he should get another term. The poll of 1,089 Iowa voters had a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points. So far, he does not have a major Democratic challenger, even though Iowa is a political swing state that twice supported President Obama. Former state lawmaker Bob Kraus is playing a bid, and other Democrats are considering the race. All right, moving on to some news from the DHS tonight, where one of the claims Deputy Secretary Andrew Marcos made defending himself against recent accusations of improper intervention on behalf of politically connected Democrats just doesn't add up, he said. Last week, DHS Inspector General John Roth released a scathing report detailing Marock's unprecedented intervention during his stint as director of the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services, also known as the USCIS, to help companies seeking approval for EB-5 visa applications. Whistleblowers said they had never witnessed interventions like Marcos and felt that they were politically motivated. When interviewed by IG investigators about his intervention back in September 2011 on behalf of a firm called LA Films, Marcos denied talking to a politically connected Los Angeles attorney about EB-5 visas. Instead, he said he talked to the attorney John Emerson about an organization whose board he sat on with Emerson's wife. Except Marcos and Kimberly Martos Emerson sat on the board for the nonprofit group United Friends of the Children more than 3 years than the 2011 conversation took place. LA firm sought EB-5 visas for investors into Hollywood movie projects. Tom Rosfeld, LA Films principal investor, contacted Emerson, who, like Marcos, had worked in the Bill Clinton White House. All right, folks. Well, we've heard Sharpton stories before, but this one will kick you in the gut because it has to do with your taxpayer money. American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees funneled more than $65 million to politicians, lobbyists, and activist groups last year. Yeah, that's right, $65 million of your taxpayer dollars, ladies and gentlemen. And would you believe this taxpayer money taken from the government workers' paychecks was then sent to the likes of MSNBC's host, Al Sharpton? It was. Indeed. The organization donated more than $126,500 to Sharpton's National Action Network, one of many
that this dingbat taking all our money is going to leave us with nothing.
Oh, boy. Corey Evans losing his nuts over this one.
I actually need those.
Back to the story, though, ladies and gentlemen, all humor aside. FSEM spending member dues on polarizing progressive causes in the government union's 2014 report. The U.S. Department of Labor disclosed $64,585 plus dollars in political activities and lobbying spending. The union also reported more than $1 million in donations to political nonprofits, including Sharpton's, as contributions, gifts, and here's that bad word, ladies and gentlemen, grants.
Again with the grants.
Aye, that's the bad thing. More on this story. We'll post it up on our Facebook page. Thanks to our friends over at the Pundit Press for bringing us this story tonight. And on that note, folks, we got to take a break at this point. When we return this evening, Orlean Koehle will join us for the review of the top stories of the week with us tonight. Plus, Corey Evans has what's coming up later in lawsuits across America and the entertainment world.
Get this, Jay. Yet another transgender is being represented, which I think is adding to our continuing battle against global socialism. I believe this time it's in Georgia. Yeah, imagine that. Georgia follows suit after California. Especially after stealing production of Family Feud from us. But at any rate, speaking of entertainment, in addition to getting your chance to see Paul Walker on the big screen one last time, I talk about how one model on The Price is Right bungled a pricing game. That's all coming up after the break. You're listening to SHR Media's The Evan Miller Report.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Is radio?
Talk news. Talk news.
Radio?
Talk news. Talk news.
Radio?
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
There are more than 3 million children in America's child protective and justice systems. Kids who've been abused, neglected, traumatized. Kids who've begun to act out. The worst situations you can imagine. They've been told repeatedly they're worthless, messed up, or written off completely as a lost cause. For their safety and others, some of these children have to be removed from their homes, separated from their families. They're at the mercy of an overwhelmed system. Every 38 minutes, another troubled child is referred to youth villages. Youth Villages believes that no child is a lost cause, not a single one, because a stable, loving family can help any child succeed. And we have an 80% overall success rate that proves doing whatever it takes for children is the only thing that works. If you agree, find out how you can help at youthvillages.org.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And welcome back to the Evan Miller Report. I'm Jason Miller. It's now time to review the news of the week, and joining us now is SHR Global Affairs correspondent Orlean Koehle, fresh back from vacation over in Germany. Good evening, Orlean.
Good evening, Jason. It's nice to be back with you.
Pleasure to have you back. Now, before we begin with some of our other headlines, you have a bit of a personal story to tell us, because you happen to be up in the air at the same time that German Wings air flight crashed into the French Alps. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, in fact, we were flying in the same kind of an airplane. Also, the German Wings plane is part of the Lufthansa Airlines, and we were also in a Lufthansa plane about the same size. And, you know, who who knew where that co-pilot was going to end up? He could have ended up at some other plane. How scary that would have been. And in the research that I've done about this, it really does look like this was a terrorist act, even though they have tried to keep that hidden. I did a lot of research trying to find out what his religion was, and eventually I began to find some websites that revealed the truth, but it was very hard. They've kept it very hidden. Anyway, he was 6 years ago, he suddenly stopped his training as a pilot for a 6-month break, and they were saying, oh, that was because of some health reasons. No, it was because that's when he became a Muslim and had his training to become a jihadist. And even the Carsten Spohr, who is the CEO of German Wings, finally admitted that that's what they believe happened. And
to think they blame his recent breakup.
They blame what?
They blamed his recent breakup with his ex-girlfriend, with whom they say he was expected. That's what I got on my end of things, but of course they probably didn't give me all the details in that report, did they?
Well, it is true. He had a Muslim girlfriend, and his close associates were all Muslims, and he received his training to become a pilot in Bremen, Germany, where a very radical mosque is. In fact, this mosque was closed down last December because of it's encouraging radical jihadists. And associates say that he broke off his relationship with his girlfriend after he pledged to commit jihad for Allah.
And I sort of heard that report off a German UPI newspaper reporter reported that about a week and a half ago, and the German government's been trying to play that down for the past week and a half, Orlean. This doesn't look good for the country of Germany, considering they're the head of the EU and all.
And considering that this young man is a German citizen, and yes, they've really tried to keep this hidden, but when you realize, if he were just suffering from some mental problem, normally someone does not plan to take 150 people out with him if he's going to commit suicide. But it does sound like someone would do if he is a Muslim terrorist, because then he believes he'll receive blessings from Allah for having destroyed what probably most of the people on the plane were Christian. And they really believe that when they do such a deed, then their relatives, all 70 of their relatives, get to have essentially salvation because of them having done this sacrificial deed for Allah. So it certainly
even
sounds...
if you watch the U.S. media reports, though, Orlean, that isn't the case. All they talk about is those poor school children that were flying back from Spain, and that's all they talk about is those poor school kids who were on that special diversity trip.
Yes, that's true. So they try to skirt over this issue, but I think little by little the truth is going to come out about it.
Well, we certainly hope it comes out soon. All right, next topic we have here. You have a couple of opinions on the most recent news that we got yesterday, that the U.S. and Western nations, the P5+1, making a deal with Iran on the future of its nuclear program, which is supposed to be happening on June the 30th, about 3 months from now.
Yes, I was listening to the news this morning. K.T. McFarland from Fox News said that all along our goals have been to try to prevent Iran from having the ability to become a nuclear state, and then number 2 was to stop a race to nuclear weapons of other surrounding states. And she says that what this new deal is going to do is make both of these goals impossible, are preventing this from happening, because we're removing all of our sanctions Obama says that they will have severe limits the first decade, but how can you guarantee that when we've removed anything to secure those limits? And what if Iran just says, phooey on you, we're going to do whatever we want to do? We've removed all leverage to try to prevent them. So it's very scary.
It's like North Korea all over again.
Yes, and what Netanyahu says, that this is definitely a huge threat to Israel. He says it's a threat to their very survival.
Well, as the foreign minister put yesterday, Orlean, all options are on the table. And I said it yesterday on this program, and I will say it once again. I think it is of Israel's best interest to take their shot at Iran. It's not a matter of how, it's a matter of when you take that shot. And I think now is a good time as ever.
Yes, it is amazing that Obama is doing this, and then he's also trying to get rid of any sanctions against Cuba so we can just have a nice relationship with them. For anyone to think that he doesn't have Muslim ties and Marxist ties when just watching his actions really reveal who he is.
Well, it certainly puts into the aspect that when he is done with his term after the 2016 elections, he really wants to become that president of the United Nations.
I think he does. You're right.
All right, enough on the international politics. We can go on about that all night. I think people have grown a bit tired of the international politics. Let's talk about something here at home. In the old state here of California, our nice little governor, Jerry Brown, decided to impose water restrictions. So what's this mean for the citizens, including Corey, Evan, and myself, who live here in the state of California, here in the old SHR studios?
Dying is the only way I can describe it, to quote the great Bugs Bunny. But, yeah, some folks...
Well, we've already seen a little of this past year, where our major cities had restrictions on how often they could water their lawns, and so many people are now removing their lawns and putting in artificial turf, which really, if they're supposed to be preventing global warming, that makes it even worse. A lawn is so good, and trees for absorbing CO2 and giving off oxygen. And when you've removed that, it's just going to make things worse. But it's an engineered drought, and this is what Representative Devin Nunes of the Central Valley says, that really this drought could be prevented if we had just had enough water storage facilities, and also if they would stop sending the water that's supposed to be going through the Delta to come to the Central Valley. They're dumping it into the San Francisco Bay, pretending that they are saving a little fish called the Delta smelt. And it's all ludicrous, based on wacky environmental pseudoscience.
Who otherwise...
And Assemblyman Shannon Grove, I heard her speak. She's also of the Central Valley of Bakersfield. And she said she believes the drought is purposely being caused in the Central Valley to bring down the cost of property. If these people cannot grow their crops, then of course they just have to sell their land really cheap. And why would they want that to happen? Because that's where the super train is coming through, built by Governor Brown, and they need that land to be cheap so they can buy up the land to build the
right,
train.
because and the project's already years behind schedule, it would seem, and it's probably going to run over its intended budget if it goes through at all.
Yes, I'm sure it is. It's already gone over its intended budget.
So what does this mean for the citizens of, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would put it, the people of California? How would they suffer?
Well, they're already suffering. I know, fortunately, my husband and I live out of the city limits in Santa Rosa on rural land, and we share a well with 14 other families, and so far our well is doing just fine. But the city people all have to have restrictions, and it's probably going to be even worse. They'll be timing the amount of water they can use for showers. One lady had put water into her bird bath and was fined $250 because that was a waste of water. So it's just
let me get this straight, Orlean. If you're as I would sometimes do in the morning, I have to go out into the garden and changing my water for our dogs. Our dogs need water. They need water to drink. So if I'm going to pour that water into the bird bath there, we can get fined for changing our dog's water and actually using that water that's already been used by the dogs, essentially recycling the water per se by putting it in the bird bath for the birds.
Well, maybe if you can explain that you're recycling the water, you can get away with it. But this lady, they fined her because she had deliberately used water from the hose to fill her bird bath, and that was a no-no. So it's just more of Agenda 21, where they are seeking to control every aspect of our lives, and by engineering a drought, they can make it so that our water is so restricted and just exercise more control over water, and that's exactly what is happening.
Disturbing, indeed. So that means, ladies and gentlemen, better watch out if you're trying to give your dogs water. You never know. The police might fine you on that. And if you want to water your nice little avocado trees, have a nice avocado in your salad, well, good luck with that. You're going to have to pay for overpriced produce now because water...
Yeah, I'm having to be careful with
wrong.
watering my Jenny's sunflowers as well, so I can understand what's going on. In fact, here in Hemet, where my studio is located, they recently gave us letters about all the restrictions that the city of Hemet had in place, and now I gather that's just the basis of the model for the statewide drought.
And what is so interesting, remember last November we had this big Proposition 1 that was supposed to solve all of our problems and was going to build more reservoirs and use billions of dollars to do so, and it passed. And nobody even mentions it now. What has happened to that money, and are they not supposed to be using that to ward off having to have these terrible restrictions?
Well, they say that it's supposed to work over time, like over a period of years, that it wouldn't kick in right away. But, yeah, I haven't heard a thing about it since then, so something's fishy
Well, as we know
here
in the state of California, when it comes to people in Sacramento spending money, they spend more money than we actually have. So that's not a surprise to me or probably our audience here in the state of California. They're probably more concerned about spending their state-owned credit card on their next cup of wine or lean than they are in spending it on water storage.
Yes, it's very sad. People themselves should be storing their own water just for emergencies. My husband and I have 10 big, huge, I think they contain 8 gallons of water out around our garden, so if we ever have to use them for emergency purposes. But that would be a wise thing for everyone to do. Who knows what the future is going to have in store for us.
Now, Orlean, when it comes to this water policing, how would you think that the state is using to police that? Do we have neighbors who have signed up to be monitors to watch their neighbors using water improperly, or as government officials flying in planes using our taxpayer dollars? How do you think that's being done?
I think it's being done by neighbors. I think that's how this lady with the water in her bird bath was reported on. But I understand also the police will be going around cruising in their cars and checking on people. It's really sounding like
I'm not surprised that they're using... Sorry?
I think we're becoming more and more of a police state, and this is just one more example of it.
Well, quite
disturbing. Yeah, and I'm not surprised, because I just recently brought this up, that in the LA Times, a poll found that the majority of folks in their sample thought that their neighbors were water wasters. So, honestly, I wonder who they polled and when or where.
Certainly not surprising there. All right, next story we have here for you, Orlean. Here in California, too, more Northern California, this over in Stockton, you have a story for us. This happened a few days ago where a truck crashed into a power pole, and this has to do with smart meters blowing up and going on fire, causing a lot of damage. Why don't you tell us about that?
That's right. It was April 1st. Nice April Fool's Day. Happened at right in the, I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Great joke, that.
Yes, a dump truck hit a utility pole, and this caused such a surge that over 1,000 smart meters exploded, and it caused 8,000 people to be without electricity that entire day. And some people, this fried their electrical sockets inside the house, so every single one of their electrical sockets was black, and how badly it damaged other parts of the house, they're just beginning to find that out.
So
but
who's going to be paying for the person's house, I wonder?
Yes, it's probably PG&E, but it's very interesting.
Somebody's bill's going to go up, that's for sure, because PG&E ain't going to pay for it outright.
That's right. But people were saying that it sounded like some car bombs going off. It was just a series of explosions, pop, 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 all around, and people were panicky. Everyone was scared, especially those who had little children at home, and of course no one could have any hot water, there was no electricity at all.
All the kids trying to get to school in the morning, my goodness.
Yes.
Yes. I'm assuming a lot of kids
but it didn't smell good
a little smelly that day.
And it just shows how bad these smart meters are. And
now the question is, Orlean, under the provisions, if it is found, if investigators or fire department officials found that smart meter was responsible for the explosions in that house, can that family end up suing the likes of PG&E and even the state of California for that damage to the house?
I hope a few people try it. That would be great.
Because that would be the damning and closing of the book on smart meters, at least in that part of California, if that were certainly the case. We should use this, as the liberals would like to call it, as a lab case in the courtroom and see if we can get somewhere to go with it.
Yes,
yeah,
I hope
there should be plenty to go off of. I mean, we've been talking about this for years already.
Yes, well, since 2010, that's when they started to be brought into California.
Exactly.
And as you know, I've written a book about smart meters called Just Say No to Big Brother Smart Meter. This would be great evidence to use as more why people should not have these. And I'm sure for those people in Stockton who had refused the smart meters, they probably were just fine. This did not cause a power surge on their meters, but there's something about the smart meters. Obviously, even people said when their smart meter was first installed, a fire started, and fire started on businesses as soon as the smart meters were installed.
You know, in a previous studio that we used, we had a little problem with our electrical panel frying out. Do you think that could have been a smart meter as well?
I have quite the feeling it was a smart meter issue, because we did have a similar problem and ended up blowing out an HD television that I had, and a computer got damaged by it. I had to take that computer in and get it repaired. They says, "What happened? Did you just put in a whole plug a power truck right into that computer? This thing almost got itself right." I said, "Well, we did have a power surge. That's probably what did it." They said, "Well, that explains a lot." So,
wow, that's amazing.
Not surprising. And then, of course, the apartment complex gave us a 3 months rent at that particular time. So we got a 3 months rent on that, but then they made sure to raise our rent in that complex the next month.
And didn't our appeal to the Southern California Edison get denied?
Oh, of course. They said they were not responsible for what happened inside, quote unquote, inside the apartments on a panel that was the apartment complexes and the panel did not belong to PG&E.
A lot of me, as we like to describe it.
Yes, absolutely. All right, I know we're running out of time, Orlean, so let's get on to our last story of the night, because we have that, and plus we want to talk about the Eagle Forum Conference. You have an update for us on our continuing battle against Common Core tonight. What do you have for us?
Well, as most parents are finding out, the big assessment testing is going to be starting next week. And this is unbelievable. Even for little children in the third grade, they're going to have 8 hours of testing. And this testing, for the most part, is so hard and beyond these little children's understandings. So many of them just end up in tears. And it's causing such a backlash across the nation. In New Jersey, they've actually had, for 3 days, high school students went in and occupied the superintendent's office, Occupy Wall Street.
They occupied little strike, did they?
They did, and it was in protest against the assessment test, and they refused to take it. And both
I'm wondering if Joe Rella was behind this. We got to check our sources.
No, he's in New York. This was in New Jersey, but there's a really good video clip about it that we've put up on our website. It was the Eagle Forum president of New Jersey. Her name is Carolee Adams. She was one of the leaders fighting this, and on the other side was a very liberal lady who had started an organization to stop Common Core, and they were working side by side together. And so this is a nonpartisan issue. Everyone should be concerned. So they, through their efforts, have gotten so many parents to opt their children out of the testing in New Jersey. And people are, of course, the superintendents are really concerned. We've also found out that superintendents are being given more money for how many of their students actually take the test. So, of course, they're fighting. Yes, they're fighting in every way they can to make sure the parents don't opt their children out. But in Chula Vista, California, we have a wonderful lady who last October, friends and she handed out Halloween candy with a little note attached about opting their children out of Common Core. They've been holding house parties in their homes, teaching parents how important it is to opt out. So we'll see. They have a huge group of parents in Chula Vista who are opting them out. It'll be interesting to see what happens even here in our liberal state of California, where supposedly people are so supportive of Common Core just because the media will not tell us the truth about it. The other states, at least...
I say the L.A. media is actually waking up to this. We may not have the Sacramento or even the likes of San Francisco or San Diego media waking up to it, Orlean. But at least we have the people in Los Angeles. They're talking about it. It's being talked about.
Good.
So we just have to keep it in the news. That is the key thing going on with that. All right, I know we're running out of time, Orlean, and I want to see if we get some contact information for that Eagle Forum president out of New Jersey. I think I may want to interview her next week and get an update on what that battle is, because I think Dr. Rella, even if he may not have been involved in this one, I think he started something over there, and I think that battle's continuing.
Yes, I think it was really New York that started the opt-out in huge numbers, and other states are now following. Well, if you go to eagleforumofcalifornia.org, you'll see this video clip coming from New Jersey, and you'll see the students occupying the superintendent's office, and they've interviewed several really articulate, well-versed students telling exactly why they're wanting to opt out of the test. And so that's hopefully going viral and will make lots of impressions on others. And then if people would like to know even more about it, they can come to our state conference, and that's going to be May 2nd in Chula
You
Vista.
have a good way of segueing into a promotional opportunity, Orlean. Go ahead, tell us a little bit more about that conference coming up on May the 2nd. And I should state before I have Orlean promo that SHR Media is the exclusive radio broadcaster of the Eagle Forum Conference. We'll be there along with Sackhead's radio crew. Sackhead Sean, Sackhead Clint, and Sackhead Sacco will all be there for this one-day event on May the 2nd. And Orlean, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who is going to be speaking there?
Well, we have a lineup of outstanding speakers. The father of Ted Cruz, his name is Pastor Rafael Cruz, who was born in Cuba and knows exactly what the loss of freedom is like. He gives a powerful address on freedom and why it's so precious and important for us to stand up for it. So he's one of our featured speakers. The daughter of Phyllis Schlafly, her name is Ann Corey, and she looks like Phyllis did probably 40 years ago. She'll be representing Phyllis and speaking, and we have a DVD that Phyllis has created, so she will be speaking on that, and we'll be able to just show it to the audience right there.
Oh,
just
wonderful.
Specially made.
Well, let's not give too much away, Orlean. That we don't want to give too much away to our audience, or else or else some of our California audience is not going to come. But I'm glad we were able to get that little intro put together. Ladies and gentlemen, we were going to try to get Phyllis to come in live via satellite, but obviously satellite time is expensive, and trying to get the technicals on that is somewhat very sketchy sometimes when you're trying to transfer it from a studio into a main to a room where a bunch of people are sitting. I understand, Orlean.
Yeah, so she's already created that for us, and so that'll be really special. We have Mary Byrne. She's an amazing PhD educator from Missouri, and she's the expert on the history of how Common Core really came to be, and she traces it all the way back to ancient Rome and to Plato's time, who was really creating the whole idea of socialism and government takeover of everyone, and that's essentially what Common Core is all about. So she gives a great presentation about the history of how we got to where we are now. And I will be speaking. I'll be the concluding speaker that kind of ties the whole conference together and gives us some action items of what we can now do. We have a great panel of activists who have all been very successful in fighting various big battles in California. They're going to be giving a little clue as to what they've been doing and leave us with some nice positive notes. So it's going to be an outstanding conference, and people can find out more about it. We're trying to get it up on our website now with all of the speakers. They're just getting that together. But people
Do you know who
can
your
go.
MC is going to be this year? I was hearing a rumor that possibly Hugh Hewitt might be the MC this year. Is that a true rumor, or
I have not found that out yet, so it might be. And the person in charge is Bonnie O'Neill, who is one of our vice presidents for Southern California. And it's her Calvary Chapel where this is going to be held. So she's been doing an amazing job getting it all together. People can go to our website and also to go to Eventbrite to register for it. And that should be up on our website soon. It's not quite there yet, but be looking for it. So
right,
it's Eagle from California.
Talking to a member of our audience outside, just happened to be walking about, and they says, "How much is the tickets for this event?" They wanted to ask on how much those tickets would be.
It's only $10.
Oh wow!
So that just makes it very reasonable. Normally we have a big luncheon included, but due to the fact this is inside a church, we're going to have various wagons that will be there outside in the courtyard where people can just go and buy their lunch. For example, like Burger King or the In-N-Out, who knows? There'll be various wagons there that people can just buy their
Just
lunch.
as long
so
as
that-
we don't bring any
I hope it's in an
Chinese
app.
food trucks in there, Orlean, because we already owe enough debt over to the Chinese. We don't need to be giving them any more money as it is.
That's right. We don't need to do that.
Excuse
So
my-
anyway,
excuse
it's going
my
to be
cruel
very
sense of
reasonably
humor.
priced. Very reasonably priced, and we hope lots of people will be able to come.
Yes,
We're expecting really about 1,000. When we did this before in this chapel, we had 1,500 people. That's because it was free, and we don't think $10 is asking a big amount. So
I think
hopefully
$10, that's the best deal in town, ladies and gentlemen. You get to sit in an air conditioning church and hear conservative views and get a little educated at the same time in the middle of May. And for those of you who don't know California weather, usually summer starts about a month early for us, and usually the heat is on, to quote a song, in the month of May. So that's May the 2nd, ladies and gentlemen, and that is at 8:30, I believe the time is supposed to be, Orlean?
the registration, and then the conference starts at 9.
All right, folks. Go to eagleforumofcalifornia.org, I believe, for more information.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right, Orlean, thanks so much. And I know we were supposed to have you off 5 minutes ago. I apologize for our in tardiness on that. And
That's just fine.
And
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure having you with us, Orlean, as always. Orlean Koehle, everybody, that our SHR Global Affairs correspondent, also the president of Eagle Forum here in California. Go to eagleforumofcalifornia.org for more information on the Eagle Forum Conference coming up on May the 2nd here. And we hope that you'll be able to join us. If you aren't able to come to the conference, don't worry. We got it all covered for you right here on the SHR Media Network on May the 2nd. Our coverage will be starting at 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, right here on SHR. And many thanks to Orlean for that. All right, time to go over to Corey Evan tonight. And Corey, great segment we had there with Orlean. And I understand you have some global socialism stories yourself in tonight's lawsuits across America.
Well, I've got one, but yeah.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you. As always, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated to come to order. Lawsuits across America for this Friday are now in session. The Justice Department put the nation's prisons and jails on notice today that it regarded blanket policies prohibiting new hormone treatment for transgender inmates to be unconstitutional, according to the New York Times. In court documents, the Justice Department backed a lawsuit brought by a prison inmate who says the state of Georgia illegally cut off the hormone treatment that she'd been taking for 17 years. It's believed to be the first time that the Justice Department has weighed in on the question of whether hormone therapy for transgender inmates is necessary medical care that states are required to provide, though California has said that it is. But at any rate, back to the story. Though the Justice Department didn't explicitly say that the prison should provide the hormones, it argued that Georgia's treatment policy and those like it are unconstitutional. The guidelines, known as freeze-frame policies, allow inmates to continue any treatment they were receiving before their arrest, but prohibit them from expanding or starting new treatments. The Justice Department argued that the Constitution requires prison officials to make treatment decisions based on independent health assessments, as in their own little standby doctors. Anyway, the prisoner, Ashley Diamond, sued the Georgia Department of Corrections in February, saying that prison officials had terminated her hormone therapy when she was in prison in 2012. She's being held at the Georgia State Prison, a men's facility. Though Ms. Diamond has been undergoing hormone treatment for many years before her arrest, prison officials didn't identify her as transgender on prison intake forms, making her ineligible for continued treatment, according to her lawsuit. According to her suit, without the hormones, Ms. Diamond's body has been violently transformed, her lawyers wrote. Quote, Ms. Diamond has lost breast tissue and her female secondary sex characteristics have diminished, they said. She has attempted suicide and self-castration multiple times, her lawyers said. Oh, man. This sort of thing going right to her head. She's got a little crossed her goofy, as the Animaniacs would say.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's making all the transvestites go nuts all over them.
Yes. And, of course, this lawsuit brought to you by Branimaniacs. Nutritionally, it lacks. And the cereal, it attacks all of your digestive tracts.
Ooh. Corey Evan with the jokes. Let's hope Warner Brothers don't hold us on a copyright lawsuit.
No. And, Jay, you got my theme, the global socialism theme.
Ah, yes. Let's cue that up.
Yeah, I got more lawsuits, but let's wrap up global socialism.
Okay, here we go. Just one moment. Where is it? And here it is.
So, how many more rotten apples will we need to lob at Jeb Bush? How did smart meters end up engineered with severe mental defects? And is this a pickle or a fish stick in this Tupperware I just grabbed from the fridge? Stay tuned for developments from our continuing battle against global socialism.
Fish sticks and pickles. I don't know what it is. That don't sound like a nutritious lunch on Michelle Obama on BC.
Right. And whatever it is, it's going right in the garbage. Moving on in our lawsuits, a judge ruled in favor of the Oxford mother who filed a lawsuit against the legislature's alternative to the Initiative 42 ballot measure, a citizen-sponsored education funding initiative that seeks to mandate the legislature fully fund public schools. This from the Clarion Ledger. Hinds County Circuit Court Judge Winston Kidd denied the motion to dismiss the lawsuit of the Oxford mother, Adrian Shipman, filed by attorney Michael Wallace on behalf of the legislator. After hearing arguments from several attorneys, Kidd also ruled that the ballot title, as it stands now, is not in accordance with Mississippi law, requiring that the ballot language may not, quote, intentionally be an argument nor likely to create prejudice, either for or against the measure. Kidd rewrote the title of 42A to say the legislature should fund, quote, effective public schools, but there would be no mechanism to enforce that right. Of course, there's no mechanism in place. They say everything, but do nothing. Critics of the legislature's alternative say the language is intended to confuse voters, and I'm confused certainly, who will be faced with two choices on the November ballot. The original initiative seeks to amend the Constitution to require that Mississippi fully fund public schools in accordance with the Mississippi Adequate Education Program. The initiative also gives the Chancery Court the power to enforce the requirement. The legislature has only fully funded MAP twice in the election year sessions of 2003 and 2007. They also voted for full funding in the 2008 and 2009 sessions, but mid-year budget cuts during the recession kept that from happening. Since then, the state has come up more than $1.5 billion short of what the formula says is necessary to meet mid-level academic standards. Define common crud balls. Yeah, I think we better move on from this one. I'll go ahead and send that to Jay to post up if you would like to look at it. Facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. And from TMZ, a good segue to entertainment, Shaquille O'Neal was way out of line when he took an Instagram pot shot at an innocent guy's face, but he's still going to get away with it. At least that's how they phrased it here. But he's still going to get away without paying the guy a cent, according to a Michigan judge. According to legal documents obtained by TMZ Sports, the lawsuit filed last summer by Jamel Binyan just got dismissed because of a jurisdictional technicality. TMZ broke the story. Binyan sued Shaq and rapper Waka Flocka Flame for defamation after they posted his pic with captions making fun of his face. Binyan has a disorder that causes facial deformities and limited hair growth. Based on the document, it's clear the judge thinks Shaq was a jerk for doing this. He calls Shaq's comments, quote, highly offensive. The problem for Binyan is he filed the suit in Michigan, and since Shaq has no residence or business there, he can't be dragged to court there. There is a silver lining for Binyan. Waka never responded to the lawsuit, so, according to the documents, he might lose by default. And with that, I declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed.
And entertainment is continuing now.
Awesome. When you think of The Price is Right, you may think of the chance of winning a brand new car!
Oh no!
Oh yeah, contestant did just that with the help of one of the models. She had 3 chances to guess the price of the car and started at the top with $19,849. No. But for some reason, the model took off that price, then took off the one below it without prompting. The second price, $21,960, was the correct answer. The model, Manuela Arbeláez, tried to cover it up. Excuse me if I butchered your name, Manuela. But it was too late. The contestant screamed, "I won!" Host Drew Carey said, "Congratulations, Manuela just gave you a car." And the contestant's happy, but the model hides her eyes behind her hand and then hides behind the 5 price tags, which is one of their most popular games. She later tweeted that Carey... I'm sorry?
I have a feeling that model isn't going to be there long.
Well, she later tweeted that Carey, quote, couldn't have been more supportive and understanding. So at least Drew Carey's understanding of what's going on, all the hot lights. It's one of those things. Normally it's the contestant that's supposed to give a dumb answer every once a blue moon, but it's a role reversal, as I like to call it. And now, forgive me for the tune, Jay, but it's time to play the music. Time to light the lights of rebooting the works for The Muppet Show tonight. Yes, I've been practicing that. The Muppet Show is the latest show poised for a reboot. Garrett, Miss Piggy, and the rest of the gang could become the new series on ABC from some top-notch talent. The Big Bang Theory's Bill Prady and anger management and subrogatory veteran Bob Cushel, Muppets guru Bill Barretta, and Randall Einhorn of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Nurse Jackie fame are on board as executive producers. Einhorn, who's directed countless of your favorite shows including Fargo, The Office, Always Sunny, and Parks and Rec, will direct the pilot presentation set to film in LA next week. Next week! Gotta get over there. I want to shake Kermit's hand.
You want to shake the hand of a communist? What's the matter with you? ABC should just
I grew up with the Muppets!
From ABC to CBC, the Communist Broadcasting Corporation. Good grief.
He's just a funny frog. He may be a liberal frog, but at the same time, he's just a funny entertainer. That's what I have to say about it.
He's married to Miss Pork Barrel Spending.
Yeah, I got a point on that one. But at the same time, a lot of kids grew up on the Muppets, so we got handed that one. And the Walker death is, of course, sadly... Yes, we do that from time to time on the show. I think it helps the ratings. But anyway, the Walker death is, of course, sadly not the first time an actor has died during filming in the recent years. From the LA Times, filmer Seymour Hoffman still had scenes left in the Hunger Games Mockingjay movie when he died of a drug OD in February last year, and Brandon Lee famously was killed in an on-set accident making The Crow back in the 80s. The most prominent example is the death of the Dark Knight star Heath Ledger in 2008. Though Ledger had actually completed filming, the death of the young Australian actor posed a significant challenge for the makers of the film, but they managed to pull through in the end. But the characters of all three ended up in the film pretty much as the script intended. There was some doubling in effects work for Lee, since all three actors were done or nearly done with shooting their parts. Not the case for Walker. The actor still had a large number of days left on Furious when he died, thus the conundrum to cut the scenes he shot, or to find some way by creative reworking or effects sleight of hand to keep him in the movie. This was, of course, all further conflict if this were just a matter of writing O'Connor out midway through, which is basically what happens if an actor dies in the middle of a television season, having shot, say, the first 10 episodes. That would be one thing, but in movies, they don't shoot in sequence, and tent poles like Furious really don't shoot in sequence. Mainly because it's very complicated to set up all the cars at one end of the street and then set them all up on the other end of the street multiple times, so they have to do it once and get it done. You see the dilemma. But you'll be the judge of how well they did on bringing it all together in theaters today. Speaking of which, It Follows is also opening up today with Micah Monroe and Keira Gilchrist, and Woman in Gold with Ryan Reynolds and Katie Holmes. Right, those are entertainment stories for today. I hope to entertain you again on the SHR Weekend. Hey, it's not too late to submit your classified want ads for tomorrow's show. Hit print screen Command Shift 4 or take a picture of a funny want ad if you find one in time and send it to my Facebook page, facebook.com/SHR Weekender. The Weekender will be, of course, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, given we don't have any technical delays up at Sacramento, but that's understandable, right here on SHR Media. Until then, back to Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. And thank you for joining us tonight on the Evan Miller Report for this Friday, April the 3rd, 2015. I'm Jason Miller. And for Corey Evan and all
And I'm Corey Evan.
Oh, go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, don't forget to follow us on Facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report and tweet us at EM Radio Report. You'll be glad you did. For all of us here at SHR Media, I thank you for listening, and we'll see you Monday.
And I'll see you Monday, Corey. Corey Evan, of course, the SHR Weekender, once again, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific tomorrow, right here on SHR Media. Coming up next is the National Weather Forecast with the BBC Met Office's Philip Avery. Good night, everybody.
Hello there, we're on our way to Canada and to the USA to check on conditions there, and the story over the past couple of days, no doubt about it, has revolved very much around this area of low pressure bringing snow on its northern flanks. Quite windy conditions, a lot of isobars there, but it's the trailing front which is causing great concerns and has done so since about Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, on through Wednesday, on through Thursday. And the concerns have revolved around the fact that that is a very active storm with warm, moist air ahead of it, colder conditions coming in behind. You will certainly know when that front's gone through because we've had damaging hail, damaging gusts of wind, and as I say, at the top end, there's that prospect of a little bit of snowfall into eastern Canada over the next day or two. Showers rather than more prolonged spells of rain, I suspect, getting in towards Vancouver, into the Pacific Northwest of the USA. Still, this drought persists here across the southwestern quarter. The temperatures are on the high side, but it's the lack of rain and the lack of snow across the Sierra Nevada that's causing us such concerns. Now, once that front is away, but you see it's still there as a feature on Saturday across Florida, things do settle down, but they will also cool down as well as the high pressure builds in. At the top end of that system, there's a lot of cloud around, and it's going to produce the odd bit and piece of snow, nowhere near the sort of extent that we've seen in recent weeks and months across the eastern side of Canada. And out towards the western side of Canada, things beginning to dry up through the latter part of the weekend into the start of next week.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.